We are now talking to Associate Press MVP voter and ESPN NFL analyst, Aaron Schatz. What's going on, Aaron?
Hey, I'm doing well. I've spent the week completely engrossed into the last four teams. The fewer teams there are, the more you get into them. So I'm about ready for Sunday's games to happen now.
Well, I will say this, with the divisional games, that was probably one of the best weekends we could ever watch when it comes to football, with the young quarterback plays, even the veteran quarterbacks, and some of the veteran quarterbacks, I guess, didn't show up to a game, but we can get into that a little bit later. But before we get into some football conversation, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you become the Associated Press MVP voter and an ESPN NFL analyst? How did you become all that?
I've been doing this for 18 years now. I was just a fan, and I felt like, I grew up reading baseball analytics like Bill James and Rob Nyer, and nobody was doing that for the NFL when I got started. And so I basically decided I was going to do it. And I created a database of every play in the NFL, and I started writing stuff about it and creating stats. And that was back in 2003. We launched our website in July of 2003, and it became my full-time job a year later. And within a year after that, I was writing for ESPN. I've been working with ESPN now for 15, 16 years. Football Outsiders has been going since 2003. It was sort of the original analytics site on the web covering the NFL. And last year, for the first time, I was selected as one of the 50 Associated Press voters for All Pro and the awards like MVP, which is a real honor. And I'm basically the sort of the analytics voice on that panel. It's like ex-players and coaches and a lot of people from the media. And I'm the analytics voice, and proud to be so.
So why don't we get into this whole voting thing? Because a couple of weeks ago, somebody, I'm not going to mention names, spoke out and said that he would never vote for Aaron Rodgers because he is a bad guy, okay? This is what has been said throughout the press over the last couple of years, and even with the whole COVID-19, him not taking a shot. I guess a lot of people want to take shots at Aaron Rodgers because maybe he's not a good guy on and off the field, which that I beg to differ. We had somebody on the show who played with him, Jarrell Worthy, who came on the show yesterday and says, whoever's saying that Aaron Rodgers isn't a good guy and he's not a good team leader, well, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. But do you agree with some of these voters on taking shots at players and speaking out, not really keeping it within the 50, 51 guys, and really speaking out and throwing themselves under the bus, where now people are believing that these writers should not be voting for the MVP?
Well, we're allowed to talk a little bit about sort of what our criteria are and how we make the decisions that we make. We're not supposed to reveal our votes until the actual awards are handed out. So I'm not supposed to say who I voted for awards, but I can say who I voted for the All-Pro team, since that's already been revealed. Look, the fact is that we vote, there's really no explanation of what you're supposed to vote for. The award is called Most Valuable Player. And what most valuable player means, you have to sort of make up for yourself. So if some people believe that you really have to incorporate like what a player does to influence his teammates, I don't think that's necessarily wrong. The wins and losses show that Aaron Rodgers is probably pretty good at influencing his teammates because they win a lot of games. So, I'm not going to judge him whether I agree or disagree with his opinion on vaccinations is not, I think, a reason to vote for him or against him for MVP. It's really about who was the most valuable player this year in the NFL. And that incorporates not just the stats that a player put up, but also who their teammates were.
Right.
Because, I will say that when I voted for Rodgers as the All-Pro quarterback.
Right.
And the reason why I chose him over Brady was that I felt that he had to overcome more because of the injuries on the Green Bay offensive line. And yes, there were some injuries, obviously, to receivers in Tampa Bay, but that was mostly towards the end of the season. And for the most part, I felt Brady had more to work with than what Rodgers had to elevate players that, other than Devontae Adams, were not necessarily elevated on their own.
So not really specifically 1 year, because you mentioned you've worked in this for 18 years now. the process of that kind of thing, has it changed a lot from when you first started to now? And also a lot of the analytics that you mentioned, like how much of those are factored into it?
You mean for my voting? I mean, listen,
Yes.
The fact that I'm one of the voters is, I think, a demonstration of the change. The fact that the Associated Press approached this guy who, one, basically runs an independent website. Yeah, I'm not affiliated with any major newspaper or radio station or television station or anything like that. Yes, I do have the content agreement where I contribute to ESPN Plus, but for the most part, I'm pretty independent. And the fact that I'm an analytics voice, I'm not in the locker room, I'm not an insider. It's right in the name of my website that we are not insiders. That's why we called it Football Outsiders. And the fact that they were open to the idea of me being one of the voters is, I think, a demonstration of the change in how people are considering analytics as a way to analyze the NFL, that you don't just, it's film study and, the personal relationships with players is not the only ways to analyze the NFL. So, I mean, I will say I take statistics pretty hardcore in deciding who I was going to vote for the All-Pro team, but I also consider film. Like, there are a couple people who I trust as offensive line gurus, like Brandon Thorne. And when I came up with my idea for who I wanted to vote for on the offensive line, I ran it past him and said, "Does this sound crazy to you?" And last year, I know one of the people that I was thinking of voting for, he said, "Don't vote for that guy," and I didn't. And I didn't, because there's certain film gurus on certain positions where the stats are harder to get, where I do trust what they have to say. And of course, also I watch all the games myself. I mean, I watch football nonstop all weekend.
So Aaron, before I ask my question, I need to know, when is the deadline for you guys to submit the MVP, the Coach of the Year, Rookies of the Year? When is that deadline to put in for the awards?
Wednesday after the season ends.
Okay. So I'll turn my question a little bit. So obviously we've kind of had a 2-horse race now for MVP. It was either Brady or Rodgers. Now, you might have thrown your name out. I'm not trying to get you in trouble, I promise. But most people I've heard talk about this, it's a 2-horse race. Do you think that, being that they've had completely two different outcomes in the postseason, yes, they both lost, but one had a kind of a dud, and the other one had a great comeback that was foiled by a blown defensive thing.
First of all, Brady had a dud too. Mm-hmm. Brady did not play well.
I said the same thing. I love you, Aaron. I said the same thing. It was the Rams practically almost gave the game away. It wasn't Tom Brady.
But Brady did play really well the week before.
Yes,
so Brady
he did
have one really strong playoff game. Right?
And so did Aaron Rodgers. Well, he didn't.
No,
he didn't play. He didn't play.
But
I'm talking about his last game. But you know what I mean. He didn't play because they had the bye week. But yes, Brady had a good game the week before. But he played against a team that he's much better than. So you would expect that.
What you're asking is, shouldn't we give these awards after the postseason?
No.
Yes.
I mean, then the awards are very different. The fact is, all 4 major American sports give the awards based on regular season play. And the voting takes place right after the regular season is over. If you wanted to give the awards after the postseason, they would become different awards. You could do that. I would have no problem voting on MVP after the Super Bowl, and perhaps my opinion of who should be MVP would change from the fact that, how Brady and Rodgers played in the playoffs. But as of now, the way it works is you vote on the regular season, and we turn in our votes right when the regular season ends.
I agree with you. When you look at the regular season, after the season is over, you put in your votes. That's the way it goes. The playoffs are completely different than the regular season, as everybody knows. There's an MVP of the playoffs after the Super Bowl. So we understand that's how it goes. But what were your thoughts going into divisional games this past week? And you look at the Bengals. They have a young quarterback, pretty much a young team. Jamar Chase is a rookie. I believe is going to be Rookie of the Year. He was sensational all season long. And Joe Burrow's coming back from a major injury of that magnitude, coming back from a 4-something record the season before in his rookie season, and then wins the division, a division that they had nobody even thought had any chance of winning. What were your thoughts of Joe Burrow's really stepping up and knocking off the number 1 seed Tennessee Titans?
Well, I mean, the Tennessee Titans, I got in a lot of trouble online for talking about this. But by our numbers, the Tennessee Titans were the worst number 1 seed of all time.
Mm-hmm.
While I expected them to win their first playoff game because they were healthy and because of the power of the bye week, it was not a huge shock for them to fall to Cincinnati. I don't think Cincinnati is as good as a lot of people believe. It's not that they don't have a chance to beat Kansas City. Certainly, it's the NFL. Every team's got a shot. Nobody is New Mexico State in the NFL, right? But Cincinnati is their defense is very mediocre and their offense is very boom or bust. They're very dependent on really big plays. And my God, does Burrow take a lot of sacks. A lot of sacks. And not just because the offensive line is bad. He holds on to the ball too long. He runs backwards. He takes sacks for more yardage than he should have taken the sacks for. There was one that was a 16-yard loss that knocked them out of field goal range against Tennessee. It was a terrible sack to take. So, I think Burrow is a very talented player who had a very strong year. But the sacks in the pass and the pocket presence is an issue with him.
So with the teams left, you're kind of seeing the offensive transition into the league, and even a lot of the 8 teams that were remaining at the end of the divisional round. Do you think now in today's game that every team is kind of required to have either a top quarterback or a offensive type coach like Kyle Shanahan or Sean McVay, something like that, to succeed in today's game? Or do you think there's still going to be a transition where you might go back somewhere to a different direction?
Well, the two things I'd say is, first of all, throughout the NFL, the history of the NFL, but especially since 1978 and the liberalization of passing, offense has been more important in the NFL than defense. So for the quarterback position to be the most important position in the game, and for offense to be more important than defense, this is not new. This is the way it's been, since 1978. I think that the NFL is cyclical, and, often, passing will rule over everything, and then, running, it'll get a little easier to run, and then running will become more important for a little bit. Not more important than passing, but more important than it used to be, right? They'll get a little closer together in their importance, and then that'll free things up for passing, and then passing will become super important again. But there's always going to be room for defense-oriented teams that go on runs. There's always going to be room for a team like the 2015 Broncos or the 2000 Ravens that doesn't necessarily have a great quarterback, or in the case of the 2015 Broncos, has the corpse of a formerly great quarterback. There will be always room for teams like that to go on runs. So, if you're a team that doesn't have a top quarterback, that doesn't have Mahomes or Allen or Herbert, I don't think you give up. But there's no question that the most important and best piece to get is a young star quarterback, and trying to build a winner without one is much harder.
Yes, I would say so. So, being that we're in New York, both the Jets and the Giants, and obviously the Bills, because they're a New York team too. Most people don't claim them. I don't know why. They're the only good team we have. But when you look at they all have 3 very young quarterbacks, and all 3 are completely different and where they are in the sense of their career. One's a stud, one's an unknown, and the other one is inconsistent at best. And being that the Jets and Giants are both right now, no offense, dumpster fires, do you see a way where maybe they can right the ship and quickly get it done? For the Giants, I think it's an offensive line. But when you look at Daniel Jones and Zach Wilson, are there pieces that the Giants and Jets can go get that will immediately help them play better?
Sure. You can always improve the team around a player, and a good, better offensive line would be good for Daniel Jones. A better offensive line would be good for Zach Wilson. The fact is, it is very rare to have a quarterback play as badly as Daniel Jones in his first 3 years and kind of put it together. Usually, if you haven't put it together, at least to get to a certain level by the end of your second year, it's not going to happen. And there are exceptions like Alex Smith, but it's rare. Usually, if a quarterback is below replacement level in his first couple years, he's not going to become a star. And so if I'm the Giants, I start looking into moving on from Daniel Jones. I know what they said. There's no question that the owner was right when he said, we didn't make it easy on this guy. But talking yourself into guys who've been bad in their early years, you end up with a situation like Carolina had, where you trade a second round pick for Sam Darnold only to have Sam Darnold continue to suck on your team. And it turns out that, he really wasn't that good.